Morning, everybody, and Neda, that was really lovely. I really enjoyed those prayers. Okay, this week I'm going to talk about the storms of life because everybody, I've had a really stormy week. I'm in the middle of moving flat, and I think you know, Mum's been in hospital, and it's been very hard to get hold of her. And the painful thing is you can't go and see anybody. So it's been very difficult. But I have had a very long conversation with her last night, which was really fantastic. So thank you for all your prayers. Right, I'd like us to read the very well-known story of Jesus calming the storm, which is Mark 4:35 to 41. Okay, that's starting at 36, it's 35. Okay, I'll start reading. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up and rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" This, even the wind and the waves obey him. Thank you, Nick. So I'm going to talk about several things. First of all, I'm going to say, well, what happened? The question that puzzles me slightly is, why was Jesus asleep in all that? What did he expect of his disciples? What's this got to do with us today? And we will also be having a brief look at a psalm. So first point, what happened? Well, Jesus suggests they crossed over the Sea of Galilee, about 8 miles wide, 12 miles long, and a group of boats went. So there's quite a few witnesses to this miracle. In fact, a first century fishing boat was discovered in the 1980s on the shores of the Sea of Galilee in a drought when the waters receded. It's known as the Jesus boat, but there is no evidence that it belonged to the disciples. Nevertheless, the discovery gives a good idea of what these boats were like. Small craft, about 27 foot long. Jesus went just as he was. Well, what does that mean? And all I could think of, he took no luggage. And then an unexpected, furious wind took the group by surprise. The Sea of Galilee is subject to sudden and violent storms. Storms are especially likely when an east wind blows cooler air over the warm air that covers the sea. The cold air, being heavier, drops as the warm air rises. And this sudden change can, to today, produce surprisingly ferocious storms in a short time. Such was the intensity of the storm that even these experienced fishermen feared death. Jesus, meanwhile, was asleep on a cushion in the stern, and perhaps he would have even slept through the storm if they hadn't woken him up. However, the disciples did wake him. Their tone is panicky, accusing. Don't you care? They knew enough about him to know he could do something. Jesus spoke to the wind, quiet, be still. Very similar words he spoke to the demons. Quiet, come out of him. His word of command was enough to create a calm. And Jesus seemed rather surprised at their fearful response. After the miracles they had seen him do and all he had taught them, are they still afraid? The disciples, rather than being reassured by the event, seem rather disturbed because they just don't get it. So, why was Jesus asleep? Surely such alarming circumstances would have woken him. What's the explanation? Well, first of all, I think he was dead tired. He led a very demanding life. People always wanted his attention. I think he probably slept very quickly, very easily. But it's more than that. Jesus was a man at peace. His mindset, his life was set and steered by unshakable truths. God was with him, his Father. 100%, never left his side. As Deuteronomy says, underneath are the everlasting arms. He believed in the Father's loving care, the loving Father he spoke of in the parables. And because of this, he trusted in his protection for himself and his friends. God, he knew, was ruling every aspect of his life in his sovereignty. It was all for his good. He knew he carried authority as Son of God to command demons, illness, death, the physical world. And incidentally, it's only the Creator who can still a storm. And Mark, when he writes his gospel, is showing his readers who Jesus really is, the Lord of creation. He is God. So, what did he expect of his disciples? They had seen him at work. So why was their faith so small? He wanted them to have the same mindset as himself. If God was always with them, why were they afraid? If God is loving Father, why were they so anxious? If God is sovereign for their good, why are they so alarmed? If he, Jesus, is master of the universe, demons, death, illness, and is with them, why are they afraid? This week, I've been pondering Psalm 139, and it's actually been a very, very meaningful psalm for me this week. I would say it has sustained me this week. And as I read it, I thought, this is the mindset that Jesus had when he was in the boat. That explains his response to the storm. So I just want to read, I don't want to read all the psalm because it's long, but I just want to read the first 12 verses. So Psalm 139, 1 to 12. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in, behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you're there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light becomes night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day. The darkness is as light to you. Please read all that psalm. It's really wonderful. I actually read it to my mum last night in hospital, and she just thought it was amazing. So what does it say? Did you notice how many times it said no, no, God knows. He knows me. He knows everything I do. He knows what I'm going to say before I say it. Wonderful words. You hem me in, behind and before. You hem me in, behind and before. The Hebrew word translated hem in, was often used of troops besieging a city. No one could get in or out. God guards us and keeps us safe. We are fully in his care. Wherever I am, God is there too, because he is everywhere. He is there in our darkest times as well as our good ones. Later in the psalm, we read about he's our creator. He knows me inside out. He even knows the day of my death. It's all planned. So, what has this to do with us? Our lives can be a roller coaster. Storms arise quickly, unexpectedly, or maybe they creep upon us. Financial, family, death or illness of loved ones, our own health. Thinking about Kev, it's so good to see you, Kev. Really great. Work, unemployment. Modern life, probably as it has always been, is full of stress. In the storm, do we just begin to carry the mindset of faith that Jesus had as we face them? Sometimes, like those disciples, life difficulties just overwhelm us. And I've been overwhelmed several times this week. Holding on to the truths of God's sovereignty and love has at times been a struggle. Sometimes I'm afraid, and I have to just get on my knees and cry out to God to deliver me from my fear. The disciple says, "Don't you care?" How easy for doubts to creep in. Let us hold on. Jesus didn't do anything immediately. I mean, why didn't he do something before the boat would soon sink? I think God is not into quick fixes on the whole. He is with us in the storm. That is where we so often find him the most and grow in those times in faith and in love. Often in these storms, I go to a place, perhaps out in the countryside, and in that place, I give my cares to God. If I'm tempted to worry after, I tell myself, in that place, I left my cares with God. At other times, I write that I'm trusting God for a certain thing. And I'm sure we all have our own ways of dealing with our anxieties, and perhaps that's something we can talk about in the breakout rooms. My experience is sometimes God actually answers very quickly. At other times, he appears to silently stand with us, and we're tempted to ask, where is he? Some years ago, I heard this story of a tribal initiation ceremony. I think it was somewhere in South America. And in this tribe, boys of around 12 are left in the jungle alone all night. All night, they have to stand by a tree and listen to the howling wild animals, the eerie cry of nighttime creatures, and the gliding by of reptiles. If they are still standing in the morning and have not run home, they are a man. The secret of this tribe is, not known to the boys, is behind the trees, out of sight, hides the boy's father, alert to protect, weapons at the ready, if necessary, just holding back, watching their son's initiation into manhood. What proud parents they must be in the morning as their son still stands. The mindset of trust, of faith in our loving Father that Jesus had and wanted his disciples in the boat to have. It's something that grows within us. We're rather like a building site under development. We are in God's school. We are learning. One day, we will live by sight and not by faith. We will see him as he is. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known, says Paul. The testing will stop. And if we can look back, who knows if we can, we may, in the light of what we then see, wonder, why did we ever get so anxious and afraid? But that's the future. So now, let us learn faith as Jesus wants us to. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.